It is 5 o'clock on the West Coast, 8 o'clock.
That's right. You're not going to get it?
8 o'clock, that means some polls have closed. And some races have been called. Looks like the Democrats have now 35 electoral votes. Donald Trump, 86. 95 now. Oklahoma just got called. Oklahoma just got called for the former president, number 45. At the moment, we have 7,961,000 votes for Kamala Harris, the vice president of this country, sitting at the moment. We have 9,340,000 votes for the former president. And the Electoral College count, the Republicans lead by 60 Electoral College votes. The Senate may well be leaning red now, folks. That's an eventuality of the situation that we're in. I am MTK. This is my elections coverage, which is basically listening to the ocean, which I think is a good thing to do on election day. I did it last time. A big one of these, and I'm doing it again this time. Calming, to listen to the ocean. I'm using only AP, the Associated Press, and C-SPAN is a non-profit, non-governmental organization. And I am live on the internet. And you are, how many of you are you? None. So, hi, Richard Price. I am MTK. We are covering the election to the extent that what we're really doing is listening to the ocean, surf sound, keep us chill, kind of just keeping track of what's going on. Thus far, I would say things have leaned the way they ought, or normally do. Perhaps Rhode Island is a surprise, but not really. The Democratic Party gains in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island have just been announced with the turning of the hour, now that it's 8 o'clock on the West Coast. So we have Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, all announced as voting for Vice President Kamala Harris. We have Indiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama now, just with the turning of the hour, Florida, all announced for Donald Trump, 95 electoral votes there, as opposed to 35 electoral votes for the Democrats. Georgia leaning toward the Republicans at the moment. Pretty well. I mean, this is looking pretty good for Donald Trump in Georgia at the moment, but it is very early. Only 35% of the votes have been counted. North Carolina leaning toward the Democrats at the moment. Virginia leaning toward the Democrats at the moment. New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Very early reporting now, folks. This is less than 20% of the votes being counted. So it's not meaningful in a way that, that like you see a little blue here, but that doesn't mean anything really at the moment. It may be a trending call that they want to put up on AP. I understand why they want to do that. But it doesn't really have meaning, because you could have a county that's heavily Republican, and they haven't gotten to it yet. So even though you're saying it's 11% reporting, that may be 11% just in one area of the state that happens to be very Republican or Democratic in support. So, at the moment, fully reported by AP, the Associated Press, Again, here we're not using any other channels. We're not using any Fox, no CNN, no MSNBC, no, only C-SPAN, the nonprofit, and AP, which announces when they feel that a race is cold. So using that context, I've done this twice before at presidential elections. I did it in 2000 that way, and that went down to the Florida thing, which was insane. I was working for a national magazine at the time in New York. You can learn about that another time. In 2004, I was working for a national radio station, similar kind of deal. Things have changed a lot, obviously, nowadays. I mean, here, if we could have had this availability for voters back in 2000, certainly it wouldn't have gone the way it went, or '04 for that matter. It seems like the USA has caught up at last to a level that we ought to have been at since the Nixon-Kennedy race. We eliminated multiple parties here in the last 100 years, which is moronic. It's only good when you have multiple parties, in my opinion. There should be a rich libertarian party. There should be a rich green party. There should be a rich party that represents, whatever, pacifists. They should all have equal money, get equal time. These are all simple things we can do with the Federal Elections Commission, but they're never done because they benefit politicians and wealthy people. They don't benefit regular people. And in this, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. The fact that we only have two choices is what's a huge problem. It makes no sense. There ought to be a legitimate green, viable, green Senate candidate in your state. There should be a green, House candidate in your state. There should be a libertarian in every state that should be viable. And the situation that they've created is one in which they give us two choices that seem very narrow. So we end up with something that called, the nation is divided. Well, it's divided if you give us two choices, sure it's divided. You don't really get a third way to be undivided, do you? Except to not show up, which many people were driven to. Many of the people from my generation were driven to that. They felt not represented during the anti-war sentiment. The wars were illegal. They felt not heard during the Occupy sentiment. The collapse was insane in '08. And they're outnumbered by the millennials and the Gen Zs and so on. So there's a kind of, it's a joke in some ways, The light blue we saw on Texas has now turned to light red. There are only 30,000 votes separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the state of Texas right now. With 16% of the count in, there are only 30,000 votes, 35,000 votes now, between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in Texas. That's what it'd be 709 there in Texas. That's kind of fascinating. The Ohio remains light blue here, and the numbers are trending, but still only 31% of the votes have been counted. AP is showing a light blue on Milwaukee. Minnesota. Milwaukee's Wisconsin, obviously, sorry. A light blue on North Carolina, light blue on Virginia, light blue on Pennsylvania, light blue on New Jersey, light blue on New Hampshire. But as you just saw a moment ago, Texas was light blue here, and now it's light red. It is too early to call. So why don't we listen to the ocean? That's what I say. Anybody else agree? Well, then hang on. chair out of there. Grab another beer. Live. I am MTK on the MIC, or the CAM, depending on how you want to look at it. We are listening to the ocean, and we are checking out the return results as they are announced by the Associated Press. The AP is obviously the one that's connected to every election location in each state. They have reporters too, I believe. Now, this did not exist in 2000 when Karl Rove, Cheney, Bush, and company clowned the system, cheated, and stole the White House in a coup. So it's great that we now have the AP, but all of this, it's a thin mask over an authoritarian presence. Our freedoms are thinly sort of covered here, if I'm honest. And in a way, it's not visible to everyone, unless you come to a point like election night, and then it becomes more visible. So the things that we've been calling for, we're slowly getting over time. Instant runoff voting is great, really important. Parliamentary representation, I mean the kind where you have a percentage for different parties. I think that's something we can look forward to, lobby for. Kansas now showing light red. Oklahoma has been called for the former president. Still 95 to 35 electoral college votes.
Good idea was this.
Texas now. There are only 50,000 votes. Oh, no, 80,000 now. 80,000 votes separate Trump from Harris in Texas. However, the county's reporting may not include large Democratic counties, so voting has just ended in those places, I believe, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. So we'll have to see. But to run down again, I am MTK. We are just kind of leaving on only AP and C-SPAN. So we're getting a strict look at actual data results, not exit polls, not the opinions of anybody, just looking only at returns as they come in, and they get to a point where AP can make a decision as to whether that can be called or not. Now, let's take a look at some of the ones that have been called for the sake of this discussion. Again, I'm only looking at this because I've covered elections in the past, federal elections in the past, and what happened on election night in the past has been such a fiasco that it becomes interesting to just be a citizen, a civilian or whatever, who is just looking at results as they roll in. I'm MTK now, citizen MTK. So in Vermont, with only 31% of the vote in, all right, it has been called already for Kamala Harris. Well, how can AP do that, you might ask yourself. Answer, though there's 60% left to count, 69% left to count, the margin of difference is huge. Okay? Kamala Harris leads Donald Trump by 40 points, almost 50 points. So she has 67% of what's in, he has 30% of what's in. He's not going to close the gap. And so AP can call Vermont confidently. That's what they believe. So boom. New Hampshire, same deal. She's up 76-22. Connecticut, she's up 68-9 to 30. Rhode Island, she's up 52 to 45. Maryland, oh wait, there's no results here. For some reason it says Maryland with no results here. That's unusual. So Maryland could be wrong. Anyway, let's look at Trump's. Indiana. In Indiana, 63% for Trump at the moment. Even though it's only 1/3 of the votes that have been counted, he's going to win the state because she can't catch up from 35.8 up to 62.6. She can't get to 50. It's not going to happen with the remaining 2/3 of the state to be counted. Okay? So that's how Indiana is called for Donald J. Trump. Okay? Because he's up 62% to 35% with 1/3 of the votes counted. Kentucky, similar deal, up 62% to 37% with half the votes counted. So Kentucky's a done deal. West Virginia, he's up 64-34 with only 16% of the votes counted. But this is a margin that's not going to be, Kamala Harris and the Democrats cannot shrink the gap. So that's been selected by AP as West Virginia has gone to former president. Now, West Virginia's Senate seat, this is kind of a big deal. Flipping is, I can give you some numbers on that in a minute. Kentucky, similar story. Trump, Tennessee, Mississippi, South Carolina. Florida has now been called for Donald Trump by AP. That's a tricky one. Okay, so 90% of the votes are in. That's what's making them call this now. There's only 11% of the votes left to be counted. He's up 55.9 to 43.3. I think they see him as a resident, if I'm honest. I think he might be a resident. But anyway. Florida has been called. South Carolina has been called. Forgive me, South Carolinians. Up 58.5 to 40 with 29% of the vote counted. That could shrink. That's when she's within 18. You only have to shrink at 9 when you're within 18. So actually, mathematically, I'm surprised to see that AP has called South Carolina, mathematically. So in that instance, you have to assume they have information that we don't have, which is on the ground. Could be exit polling, probably not, because they're trying to be very concrete, the Associated Press, with regard to results ever since the Florida fiasco of 2000, which was just a violation of everything. I was right in the middle of it. You guys can see. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What's the point? Okay, Mississippi has been called. Alabama called. Wide margins here, 68-30. Mississippi is actually closer than that. And I wonder if black turnout in Mississippi could turn things. It's only 52.9 to 45.7 in Mississippi. So it's unusual to see this. A refresh brings us up some new light blues here in the early voting. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, here we go. 6 minutes ago. Why the AP called Florida. I'm going to read it. Are you ready? Nobody's watching. It's you and me, Mark. Ah. Okay. So, when AP called the race, Trump led Harris by 11 percentage points, with about 80% of the expected vote reported. Trump was generally doing better around the state than he did 4 years ago, including in Miami-Dade County. Home to Miami, where he was winning the county with 55% of the vote. He won 46% there in 2020. Trump won Florida by 3 percentage points in 2020 and by a single point in 2016. So, Florida, AP now reports why they're calling it that way, which I think is important. They better be doing this with everything. All right. Ron DeSantis won re-election by nearly 20 percentage points in 2022. I mean, it's solidly Republican. Again, what does it mean? We live in a stupid time. Rhode Island, your 2 votes will go to Harris, it looks like. Oklahoma, your 13 votes will go to former president, the impeached and convicted one. Let's see here. Texas was looking pretty fun when it was light blue, but let's be real. Now, Texas, the gap is widening. Now 400,000 people more. 400,000 more Democrats after a third of the vote has been counted. And the margin is increasing, 53.5 to 45.2%. It was light blue for a minute. Kansas has swiveled. Kansas now is showing light blue. It's possible that Kansas's 6 electoral votes will swivel. They are very close, you see. It's gone blue, then red, then blue. Illinois could be close to being, no, only 1% of the vote has been counted. Minnesota, again, only 4% of the vote counted. Pennsylvania, only 8% of the vote counted. Ohio, 38% of the vote has been counted in Ohio. It is a slim, tight margin. Okay, there are 14,000 votes in the state of Ohio. Okay. There are 14,000 votes in the state of Ohio separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, with 38% of the vote counted. Ohio has 17 electoral votes. You know, it's worth like an Oklahoma and a Kansas. Okay. Oh, just like that, Ohio is now, there are only 11,000 votes separating. Not even. There are 10,500 votes separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the state of Ohio at 8:25 p.m. there. Down to 4,000 votes separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. See, this is the window of time that I'm wondering about. And boom, just like that, it goes to blue. I mean red. So Ohio, just as we were speaking about it, Ohio has gone red. In the moments we were talking about this, between 38% counted and 39% counted, Donald Trump gained 20,000 votes, took the lead by 4,000 votes. There are 4,000 votes separating Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in the counting of votes in Ohio, with 40% in. Ohio will probably take a while to sort out, just as it did in 2004. I still believe deeply in my heart of hearts, with reporters on the ground reporting to me live from there that night, and all the way through everything that we petitioned, that Ohio went to Kerry and George W. Bush lost Ohio. You can read about that, you can see that on the sites, blah, blah, blah. You can call Pacifica and ask them to give you the content. I packaged it all neatly and gave it to them. Maryland has been called. There are only 4,000 votes separating Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in the state of Ohio, with 40% of the vote in. There are only, actually, you know what? Pennsylvania is looking pretty good at the moment. Michigan, Illinois, Kansas, all leaning blue. Kansas, only 4,000 votes, again, separate. Illinois, with only 4% counted, and probably, you know, Chicago, huge city there, you have to understand. So, Kamala Harris leading in Illinois, Michigan rather. Kamala Harris leading in Michigan by 48,000 votes, with only 5% of the vote in. So that's too early to call. Pennsylvania, too early to call. But looking Democratic, Ohio, now the gap. That's the trick. Ohio is going to be a trick. Virginia has changed. Earlier in the evening, Virginia was light blue. Now it is light red. There are only 800 votes separating Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the state of Virginia, after 37% of the vote has been counted. So Virginia is back on the swivel deck. North Carolina, only 8,000 votes separate the two candidates. Georgia, only 300,000 votes separate the two candidates. Texas, 1 million votes separate the two candidates, leaning toward Trump. My guess is, and there are now 38% of the vote has been counted. If you're going to ask me to make a guess, the time is 7:28 in Texas. I think that by 7:30 in Texas, the AP will call, well, say 7:40, AP will probably call Texas for Donald Trump. That's my guess. Just looking at the trend right here live with you as a citizen. All right, Illinois, Michigan, these are all just, hardly anybody's counting. I mean, has been counted. The AP is reporting, you know, whatever, all kinds of stuff. It's time to go back to listening to some ocean sounds. The Electoral College count by AP's reckoning is at 95 to 35. right, folks, at 5:33, we have some action. Why is it getting quieter? We are listening to the ocean here as we watch Associated Press make the call. And we're talking about how they do it. And we might go to some C-SPAN. At the moment, at
Go for it.
7:34 in
You're not gonna get it?
Texas. At 7:34 in Texas, the race is very close. And I would say that's the same, the case is the same in several states. Pennsylvania, however, is leaning more and more toward the Democrats. And since I last spoke to you, Donald Trump has gained 6 electoral college votes from the calling of, my guess is Mississippi, yes. And in the meanwhile, Kamala Harris has gained 17 from the calling of Maryland, which there's some statistical problem on this thing, and perhaps Connecticut. Would that be 15? Oh, here it is. You can see at the top. Rhode Island called for her. Vermont, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, Delaware, and Connecticut make up her 52. West Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Kentucky, Indiana, Florida, Arkansas, and Alabama. Republican. At the moment, we are waiting for polls to close in the next hour or so, and we'll get significant results. Pennsylvania at the moment is leaning Democratic. Michigan is leaning Democratic. Illinois is leaning Democratic. That's 19 plus 15, that's 34 plus 19, 53. Yeah, so with those three, if those three remain blue, then the Democrats would have the lead by 2. I mean, assuming no other states go red, but many are. So, but this does make up the gap if you want to look at it that way. Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Illinois, if they stay the way they're going, trend-wise here, the margin's going to be too much. Michigan's the closest, and we'll see. Let's go down to Mississippi and take a look. The one he just called. Mississippi with only 4% of the vote in. That's why I found that strange. They called it on the basis of a 55.3% to 41.8% difference. Now they put up a thing called Inside AP's Call for Florida, which is the article that they wrote. Almost every region of Florida shifted to the right. Another AP piece. Let's see, I don't think we have much more here. Hi, second viewer. I'm trying to look stuff up. Turn up the sound of the ocean. We're listening to the ocean over here. And watching returns come in. I'm just giving a full report so you can just rewind. I'm going to turn the ocean up. I'm trying to turn the ocean up. They've given Illinois. They have given Illinois, which brings Harris to 71. Ohio now has turned pink. 60,000 votes have just come in, tipping Ohio at what would be 8:40 p.m. What happened between 8:22 p.m. and 8:40 p.m. in Ohio? I want to know. I want to know what happened between 8:22 and 8:40 in Ohio. I want to know that down to the ground, right now. That's what I want to know. How much is this clown up there cheating? It's happened before. 04, the Diebold, blah, blah, blah. 2000. Look, this is stuff I want to know now. I don't want this certified. This is the best reporting I can get, okay? This is the best reporting I can get. I am a civilian, and I'm a newsman, you know? I know what the news is, I know what journalism is, and I know what elections are. Now, my point is this. This is the best reporters I can get in every state. What just happened in Ohio between 5:22, you can watch on the reason why I'm doing this. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the counting in that state between the time of 5:22 and 8:22 and 8:40 in Ohio. That's what I want to know. Okay? Now in that same time period, see, look at that. Now, I want to see who turned in their counts. I want to see who turned in their counts and when in the state of Ohio between 8:15 and 8:40. I want a record of that. Put it on a spreadsheet. Have it in my email by tomorrow. That's what I want. In the meanwhile, everything else trending in the direction of previously, nothing shocking. Texas, though, did start off light blue, now trending. Where he was up 4,000, 6,000, it became 1 million within 15 minutes. Now it's 3,004,000 votes. The Republicans back the former president to the tune of 52% of that counted. It's only half the votes counted. The odds of big counts in San Antonio and Houston, Harris County and Bexar County dropping in and changing this now would have to be over 3 million, which isn't going to happen. Kansas now back to red. Kansas is flipping back and forth, and now another place. What happened in Kansas who submitted time would be 7 in this case. 7:22 to 7:40 p.m. Kansas time. I would like to know exactly who submitted to AP, the numbers, and AP's sources down to the ground. I want to know how that goes down right there. Okay? Because that is now changing in color. And I'm watching the counts come in. And I'm just verbalizing it because I can, because this thing gives me an ability to go live. And I want a record. Because on election night, in the past, I've done this with a staff. And on the radio, or in a magazine, or whatever. So look. Trending, but called. Why? The Illinois call should be described over here by AP. That's crazy. Ohio is down to 60,000 votes again. 80,000 votes. Hang on. 63 plus 24. 91,000 votes separate in Ohio at the moment. Pennsylvania trending solid. Michigan, interesting change. Pennsylvania should be called by their time 8, by 9 o'clock. By 9 o'clock, Pennsylvania should be called. Texas should be called with half the votes in now. Trump leading by now 4 million votes in Texas at what is 7:45 in Texas. Texas seems to have gone Republican. Now, the reason why we can say that again, even if they haven't counted Bear County or Harris County or the ones in Austin or whatever, the traditionally Democratic counties, even if they had saved those till the end, there's not 4 million voters. That would be a record turnout, and that Americans don't do. They prefer not to vote. In Texas especially, they prefer not to vote. But the ones who have voted, there seem to be about half of them counted now, the 40 electoral votes of Texas. And by AP's reckoning, more than 4 million Texans have approved the former president over the sitting vice president. It'll be about 7 million votes total. It's like 3.4 to 3.1. That's being generous to the Democrats. Okay, that was the announcement there. Kansas now swinging back. So Kansas is swinging wildly. Ohio looks weird. Ohio, we need to have a conversation about Ohio. The state of Ohio, I wish a guy like Dave Chappelle, who's a property owner in Ohio, would shine his light on what's going on in Ohio between the hours of polls closing and 9 p.m. That's what I want to know. Somebody get Dave Chappelle on that. He lives there. He's a voter there. Michigan, trending, low turnout. That's what I would say about Michigan at the moment. With 8% of the vote counted, the Democrats seem to be leading. Pennsylvania should be called in the next 15 minutes. Michigan will be called shortly thereafter. Missouri, now a place I expected to be red, is comfortably red with 2% counted. Georgia, they're hung up because there are 55% of the votes have been counted in Georgia. Okay? There's an 11-point difference. That's like 3 million people. But there could be 3 million voters there. I mean, 300,000 people. But there could be 300,000 voters there. You know? Oh, am I off? Yeah, I was saying million, I meant 1,000. 400,000 voters. And Texas could turn around. Well, I'm wrong then. I'm wrong. It's not millions of voters. It's hundreds of thousands. It's hundreds of thousands of voters. I mean, Texas could turn. It's not good. Georgia could turn. I really doubt it. 52-47, 52-47. Both states more than half counted. It would need 300,000 votes in Georgia. You would need 500,000 votes in Texas. Yeah, I'm wrong. What am I saying? Sorry. Totally wrong. I was totally wrong about Texas and Georgia. I was conceding them. But they're going to be close to conceding. In the meantime, okay. Okay, that's it. There's nobody watching, so bye-bye.